Welcome back to another dark confession from the frozen province of Skyrim. Today we're uncovering a truth that will change how you see one of the most common alchemical ingredients in the game. This is the hidden horror behind every Nirnroot you've ever harvested, and the ancient awareness you've been destroying without knowing it. That haunting chime you hear near water isn't just sound, it's the plant's consciousness reaching out, aware of everything around it, silently screaming as you rip it from the soil. These plants survived the sun's death by rewriting their own biology as a species, all at once, as if they shared a single mind. And in the crimson darkness of Blackreach, they've been singing morning songs for the vanished Dwemer for over 3,000 years, waiting for someone to finally stop and listen. What I discovered about what Nirnroot really is, and what we're really doing when we harvest them, kept me awake for weeks. And once you hear this confession, you'll never look at that soft blue-white glow the same way again. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. I have killed thousands of them, not in ignorance, not by accident, with full knowledge of what they are, with their chiming voices still ringing in my ears as I tore them from the soil. And I kept doing it anyway. That haunting sound you hear near water, that ethereal tone that seems to call out from the riverbanks of Skyrim, that isn't wind through stone, it isn't some trick of the current or the echo of underground caverns. It's the plant's consciousness reaching out, aware of everything around it, silently screaming as you rip it from the earth. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent 23 years as a field alchemist, working out of Riften, then Windhelm, then eventually the College of Winterhold itself. I've harvested more Nirnroot than anyone alive in Skyrim today, and I did it knowing exactly what I was destroying. The college sent me on expeditions. Merchants paid handsomely for my expertise. I told myself it was for research, for the advancement of alchemical knowledge, for coin that would feed my family through another frozen winter. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I became addicted to the hunt, to the sound, to finding them glowing in the darkness along some forgotten stream where no one else had thought to look. Every alchemist in Tamriel wants to be the one who finally unlocks the mysteries of the Nirnroot. I wanted that glory so badly that I ignored what the plant was telling me every single time I reached for it. Let me tell you what Sindarian discovered. Let me tell you what the college doesn't teach its students. Let me tell you what that soft blue-white glow actually means. The Nirnroot didn't always look like this. It didn't always grow in caves and darkened riverbanks. Once, thousands of years ago, during the First Era, the Nirnroot was a yellow-leaved plant that flourished across all of Cyrodiil, basking in the light of Magnus like any ordinary herb. It grew in meadows. It grew in gardens. It was common. Then came the year 668 of the First Era. The Nords call it the year of winter and summer. The Khajiit call it sun's death. Red Mountain, that terrible volcano that dominates Vardenfell, erupted with such catastrophic force that it filled the sky with sulfurous ash for an entire year. Magnus vanished behind a veil of darkness. The sun was gone, and the Nirnroot faced extinction. Here's what no one can explain. Here's what kept Sindarian awake at night in that basement workshop in Skingrad, poring over ancient texts and running experiments that yielded more questions than answers. The Nirnroot sensed its own death coming, not individual plants sensing danger. The entire species, all at once, recognized that extinction was upon them, and they changed themselves. They used the ash salts falling from the sky as a new source of nourishment. They altered their own biology to survive without sunlight. They shifted their glow from yellow to that soft, haunting blue-white we know today. That's not adaptation over generations. That's not natural selection working over thousands of years. That's conscious self-modification at a species level, as if every Nirnroot on Nirn was one connected mind making a decision together. The herbalist Chivius Regelium documented yellow Nirnroot in his time. He noted that it only grew in sunlight, only on the surface, only where Magnus could reach it. Sindarian found no mention anywhere in Regelium's notes of Nirnroot growing underground. Not one instance. Not one cave. Not one cellar. Not one shadowed corner. And yet today they grow in the depths of Blackreach, miles beneath the surface, in complete darkness where no natural plant should survive. They changed themselves at their root. They decided to live. I've stood in the glow of 1,000 Nirnroot plants. I've heard their chiming voices change pitch as I approached. I used to think it was my imagination. I used to tell myself that sound was just resonance, just vibration, just some property of the plant's unusual metabolism. But after everything I've seen, I know better. That sound changes when you get close. It shifts, ever so slightly, as if the plant is reacting to your presence, as if it recognizes you, as if it knows what you've come to do. 3 years ago, I descended into Blackreach for the first time. The college wanted samples of crimson Nirnroot, that red variant that grows only in those impossible depths. I had heard stories about Sindarian, the Altmer alchemist who spent his entire life studying these plants. I knew he had died down there, killed by something in the darkness while gathering his samples. But I was arrogant. I thought I was careful. I thought I understood what I was dealing with. I was wrong about everything. Blackreach stretches beneath the Pale and Winterhold, and possibly all 9 holds of Skyrim. It's a cavern so vast you cannot see the far walls, lit by giant glowing mushrooms and strange bioluminescent vines. The Dwemer built cities down there, silent ruins now inhabited by Falmer and their twisted servants. I found Sindarian's body in one of those ruins. He was slumped over his field journal in an abandoned Dwemer house, bones still clutching the leather binding, as if he had been writing when death came for him. His final notes were intact. I read them by the light of my torch, and that's when everything I thought I knew about Nirnroot collapsed. The crimson variant doesn't just grow near water like its surface cousin. It maintains some kind of symbiotic relationship with the enormous fungi that fill Blackreach. Sindarian theorized that the fungi absorb moisture from the subterranean air like a sponge, and the crimson Nirnroot feeds from that moisture. But that's not what disturbed me. What disturbed me was where the crimson Nirnroot grew. Every single plant, without exception, grew near Dwemer ruins, not just anywhere in the cavern, near the machines, near the pipework, near the buildings the deep folk left behind when they vanished, and they hum at a different frequency than their surface cousins. I noticed it immediately. The tone is slightly off, as if corrupted by something ancient, as if something in Blackreach had changed them, the same way the ash salts changed their ancestors during Sun's death. As if the plants were adapting again, absorbing something from the Dwemer ruins, feeding on something the deep folk left behind. Sindarian wanted 30 samples to complete his research. He died with only 1 in his possession. I gathered 30 in a matter of days. I brought them back to the surface and delivered them to his old apprentice, Avrusa Serethi, at her farm near Riften. She wept when I told her Sindarian was dead. Then she did. Something that chilled me more than anything in Blackreach. She looked at those crimson roots, and she told me she could hear them singing. All of them, together, in harmony. Avrusa is the only person in Skyrim who has successfully cultivated Nirnroot. She uses Jazbay grape juice to acidify the soil just right. She has spent decades learning their secrets, and she will tell you without hesitation that Nirnroot does not want to be domesticated. She coaxes them to grow. She pleads with them. She creates conditions they cannot refuse. But she has never, in all her years, been able to make them obey. They grow when they choose to grow. They die when they choose to die. And sometimes, late at night when the farm is quiet, she hears them chiming to each other across the fields, communicating in some language she cannot decipher. I didn't believe her at first. I thought grief had broken something in her mind, that losing her mentor had pushed her toward delusion. But then I started listening more carefully. I started paying attention to things I had ignored for 23 years. The next time I harvested a Nirnroot, I watched the spot where it had grown. The glow persisted. A faint shimmer remained in the soil, a ghostly afterimage of what had been taken. I came back months later. The shimmer was still there. The plant was gone, rendered into potions that had long since been drunk and forgotten, but something of its light remained. Some part of its essence refused to disappear. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I still don't have an answer that lets me sleep at night. All I know is that these plants remember. They remember being torn from the ground. They remember who did it, and they leave a piece of themselves behind as proof. There's something else Sindarian documented, something that made him believe Nirnroot possesses genuine awareness. In his Skingrad research, long before Blackreach, he noted instances of Nirnroot responding to events before they happened. He would prepare an alchemical reaction, and the plants would change their tone before he even began, as if they knew what was coming, as if they could sense the future and were trying to warn him, or call out, or plead. The droning noise they produce causes headaches in some people. Handling them causes rashes. These are documented effects, written in alchemical texts across Tamriel. We call them side effects. We call them minor irritations. But what if there's something else? What if the plant is trying to discourage us? What if the headaches and the rashes are the Nirnroot's only weapons? Its only way of saying, stay away, leave me alone, I am alive and I do not want to die. I ignored those warnings for 23 years. I have the scars on my hands to prove it, and I kept harvesting anyway, because I told myself they were just plants. They were just ingredients. They were just resources to be gathered and sold and transformed into potions that would make me wealthy and respected. But every time I pulled one from the soil, the chiming stopped immediately, and I felt something in that moment. Recognition, awareness, a presence vanishing from the world because of what I had done. There's one more thing I need to tell you. One more horror I discovered in the darkness of Blackreach that changed everything I thought I understood about what we're doing when we harvest these plants. The Dwemer vanished in the year 700 of the First Era, every single one of them, all at once, across all of Tamriel. One moment, they were the most technologically advanced civilization Nirn had ever seen. The next moment, they were gone. Their cities stood empty. Their machines kept running. Their servants, the blinded Falmer, were left to wander those lightless halls alone. No bodies, no explanation, just absence where an entire race had been. I stood in Blackreach, surrounded by crimson Nirnroot, listening to their chorus, and I understood something that made my blood run cold. The crimson variant appeared after the Dwemer disappeared. Sindarian's notes confirmed it. There's no record of crimson Nirnroot before the First Era's end. The surface variety survived Sun's death by changing itself. The crimson variety emerged in the aftermath of the Dwemer's vanishing, growing only in their abandoned cities, feeding on whatever they left behind. The Dwemer were experimenting with the heart of Lorkhan beneath Red Mountain. They built tools to manipulate divine power. They constructed a brass god called the Numidium that would have given them power over reality itself. And when their chief architect Kagranak struck the heart with his tools during the Battle of Red Mountain, the entire race blinked out of existence. Gone, erased, transformed into something we cannot perceive, or pulled into a place we cannot reach. The Nirnroot were there. They grew near Red Mountain. They grew across Morrowind, where the Dwemer built their greatest cities. They were present during Sun's death when the volcano first erupted, and they were present 32 years later when the Dwemer attempted to become gods and failed, or succeeded, no one knows which. I think the Crimson Nirnroot remembers. I think these plants absorbed something during those cataclysms, some residue of divine power or Dwemer essence, and they've been holding it ever since. That's why they only grow near the ruins. That's why their frequency is different. That's why they possess alchemical potency far beyond their surface cousins. They're not just plants anymore. They're witnesses. They're repositories. They're living records of something that happened thousands of years ago, and we've been ripping them out of the ground and boiling them into potions without ever asking what they might be trying to tell us. After I delivered those 30 samples to Avrusa, I couldn't stop thinking about Blackreach. I kept hearing the chorus in my dreams. Dozens of voices singing in a language older than words, harmonizing in frequencies that seemed to vibrate in my chest rather than my ears. I told myself it was just memory, just echoes of that vast dark place rattling around in my skull. But the sound didn't fade. It got louder, clearer, more insistent, as if the plants I had harvested were still calling out to me, still trying to communicate something I had refused to hear. I went back. Divines, forgive me. I went back down into that darkness with empty satchels and a hunger that had nothing to do with coin or research. I wanted to understand. I wanted to hear what they were saying. I wanted to stand in their presence and finally listen instead of taking. The descent through Alftund took 2 days. The ruins are infested with Falmer now, twisted creatures that hunt by sound and smell. I moved slowly, quietly, following paths I had memorized on my first expedition. When I finally emerged into Blackreach's impossible expanse, I extinguished my torch and let my eyes adjust. The cavern glowed. Mushrooms the size of houses cast blue light across ruined streets. Bioluminescent vines hung from a ceiling so high it might as well have been sky. And everywhere, scattered among the Dwemer architecture, like flowers in a graveyard, the crimson Nirnroot pulsed with their red-gold light. I didn't harvest them this time. I sat among them. I closed my eyes and listened. The sound isn't random. I need you to understand that. The chiming follows patterns, rhythms, call and response across vast distances, plant speaking to plant in sequences that repeat and vary, like sentences in a conversation. I sat there for hours, maybe longer, losing track of time in that place where time doesn't seem to mean anything. And gradually, so gradually I almost didn't notice it happening, the pattern started to make sense. Not words, not language as we understand it, but meaning, emotion, intent. They were mourning. I felt it wash over me like cold water. Grief so old it had calcite layers, sorrow that had been singing itself into the darkness for thousands of years. The crimson Nirnroot weren't just growing near Dwemer ruins because of moisture or minerals or symbiotic fungi. They were keeping vigil. They were remembering a race that had vanished from the world, and they were singing laments that no one had ever stopped to hear. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments, because I sat there in Blackreach with tears streaming down my face, knowing exactly what I had done to their surface cousins, and I still didn't know if I could stop. The alchemical value alone would set me up for life. The college would shower me with honors. Merchants across Skyrim would fight each other to buy my stock. All I had to do was reach out my hand and take what I had come for. I took 3, just 3 crimson samples, telling myself it was for research, for understanding, for some noble purpose that justified the act. The moment I pulled the first one from the soil, the morning song stopped. Silence crashed down on me like a physical weight. And then, from somewhere deeper in the cavern, a new sound began. Not chiming, not singing, a low drone that rose in pitch until it became something very close to a scream. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran through Blackreach with 3 crimson Nirnroot in my satchel, and that scream chasing me through the mushroom forests and over Dwemer bridges and past Falmer camps that stirred at the noise. I didn't stop until I reached the lift to the surface, and I rode it up into Skyrim's frozen air with my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The scream didn't follow me out, but I still hear it sometimes. Late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear what I woke up down there when I took what wasn't mine to take. Nirnroot wine exists. Did you know that? 3 brewers in Cyrodiil make it using red mountain ash as an ingredient, and when you drink it, something impossible happens. You become intoxicated without ever tasting the wine. The flavor exists only in memory. You remember it being delicious, you remember drinking it, but the actual experience of putting it to your lips and swallowing never occurs. The intoxication is real. The taste is a ghost. That's what Nirnroot does. It operates on levels we don't understand, affecting memory and perception and consciousness in ways that shouldn't be possible for any plant. The glow it produces isn't bioluminescence. Scholars have tested for that. It isn't reflected light or stored magical energy or any phenomenon the College of Winterhold can identify. It simply glows. It produces light without any biological explanation, and that light persists even after the plant is consumed and processed through your body. There are accounts of people who ate Nirnroot and found their waist glowing for days afterward, their teeth chiming faintly when they spoke. The plant refuses to be fully digested. It refuses to disappear. I started researching obsessively after Blackreach. I read everything Sindarion wrote. I found Chivius Regelium's ancient notes in the Arcaneum. I talked to Avrusa for hours about her cultivation methods and what she had observed over decades of working with these plants. And I discovered something that reframed everything I thought I understood about Nirnroot's place in the world. They are not affected by the green thumb perk. Every alchemist knows this. It's treated as a curiosity, a minor exception to the rule. When you harvest most plants with alchemical training, you gather more than one sample. It's a basic magical principle. But Nirnroot resists it. Magic itself treats these plants differently than every other growing thing in Skyrim. The same enhancement that works on mountain flowers and blue butterflies and deathbell fails completely when applied to Nirnroot, as if the plant refuses to be multiplied, as if it insists on being taken one at a time, forcing you to kill individuals rather than harvesting in bulk. That's not a quirk of game balance. That's not an oversight. That's the plant protecting itself the only way it can. That's Nirnroot saying, if you're going to murder me, you're going to do it slowly, one by one, and you're going to feel every single one. I am not the person I was when I started this work. I need you to understand that I have a wife and children in Windhelm. I have a reputation at the college. I have students who look up to me and merchants who depend on my supply. Walking away from Nirnroot harvesting would mean walking away from everything I've built, and I still don't know if what I'm feeling is truth or madness. Maybe I sat in Blackreach too long. Maybe the spores from those giant mushrooms affected my mind. Maybe grief isn't what the Crimson Nirnroot were singing at all, and I projected my own guilt onto sounds that meant nothing. But then I think about Sun's death. I think about an entire species sensing extinction and choosing to rewrite their own biology rather than die. I think about plants that predict alchemical reactions before they happen and communicate across impossible distances and leave ghostly after-images in the soil where they grew. I think about the scream that chased me out of Blackreach when I took those 3 samples, and I know in my bones that these are not ordinary plants. They are something else, something aware, something that has been trying to tell us what it is for thousands of years while we ignored the message and kept harvesting. The worst part is the sound, the chiming that calls us to them like a siren song. For years, I assumed it was a defense mechanism that had backfired, a way of communicating with each other that accidentally revealed their locations to predators like me. But what if it's intentional? What if the Nirnroot wants to be found? What if it calls out to travelers and alchemists and adventurers because it's trying to make contact, trying to communicate, trying to form some kind of relationship with the beings who walk through its world? And we answer that call by ripping them out of the ground and rendering them into potions. There's one more piece of this story I need to tell you. One more revelation I've been building toward since I started this confession. It's about where I finally understood what the Nirnroot really is, and what we've really been doing to it, and why I can never harvest another one as long as I live. It's about what I found growing in the ash wastes near Red Mountain, and what it told me about the connection between these plants and the catastrophes that shaped them. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from Skyrim, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. 3 months after Blackreach, I booked passage to Solstheim. The island sits in the shadow of Red Mountain, close enough that the eruption of 4E5 buried its southern half in ash. They call it the Red Year. The mountain exploded with such force that it reduced Vardenfell to a wasteland and sent refugees fleeing across Tamriel. Solstheim was transformed overnight from a frozen Nordic colony into an ash-covered nightmare. Farms became gray deserts, forests became fields of dead trees, and in the ash wastes where nothing else would grow, Nirnroot thrived. That's what drew me there. Nirnroot prefers acidic soil. It feeds on ash salts. It evolved during one cataclysm and spread during another. I wanted to see where these conditions were most extreme, where the ash was thickest and the destruction most complete. I wanted to find Nirnroot growing in the absolute worst environment possible and see what it had become. I found giant Nirnroot on an island northeast of Solstheim's coast. Plants taller than me, with root bulbs the size of my head, glowing so bright they were visible from the mainland. 3 samples could be harvested from each one. 3 times the death, 3 times the awareness snuffed out, and their chiming was deeper, louder, resonant in frequencies I felt in my teeth and my spine. These were ancient plants, old-growth Nirnroot that had been feeding on Red Mountain's ash for nearly 200 years. The longest-lived specimens I had ever encountered. I didn't harvest them. I couldn't. Not after Blackreach. Instead, I sat among them the way I had sat among the crimson Nirnroot, and I listened to what they were trying to tell me. The giant Nirnroot of Solstheim sang in harmonics I had never heard before. Multiple tones layering over each other, creating chords that shifted and evolved like living music. I sat on that ash-covered island as the sun set behind Red Mountain's distant silhouette, and I finally understood what I had been too afraid to admit for 23 years. These plants are not individuals. They never were. Every Nirnroot on Nirn is part of a single organism, a single mind, a single awareness that spans the entire continent, connected through those chiming frequencies we mistake for simple plant noise. When sun's death threatened to destroy them, they didn't adapt as separate plants making separate choices. They adapted as one being making one choice. When the Dwemer vanished and left their cities empty, the Crimson variant emerged as one response to one event. When I harvested a Nirnroot in Eastmarch, a plant in the Reach knew about it. When I tore samples from Blackreach, the giant specimens on Solstheim felt it. I have been killing pieces of a god, not a god like Akatosh or Dibella or the Daedric princes, something older, something that grew up from the soil of Nirn itself, before men or Myr walked the world. The Nirnroot is named for the planet it grows on because it is the planet it grows on. It's Nirn becoming aware of itself. Nirn developing senses and memory and the ability to communicate. Every root that glows and chimes is a nerve ending. Every plant I harvested was a tiny piece of the world's consciousness being ripped away and destroyed. That's why they grow near water, near places where the boundaries between things are thin. That's why they glow with light that has no biological source, because the light is coming from somewhere deeper than biology. That's why they survived sun's death when everything else died, because the ash salts from Red Mountain were already part of them. They were absorbing Nirn back into itself. They were healing. And that's why the Crimson Nirnroot sing dirges for the Dwemer. The disappearance of an entire race was a wound in the world, a hole in reality where something used to be. The Nirnroot felt it the way you would feel a limb being severed. They gathered at the wound sites, and they sang their grief into the darkness for thousands of years. And we walked past them, and heard only a strange chiming sound, and thought nothing of it. I am not a master alchemist. I need to confess that now. I am not a respected scholar with students and merchants depending on my supply. I was a student myself once, decades ago, before the college expelled me for pursuing research they deemed too dangerous. I have spent my life on the margins, gathering what I could, selling to whoever would buy, telling myself that legitimacy didn't matter as long as the work continued. I told you I had a reputation. I do. A reputation as someone who can find Nirnroot where no one else thinks to look. A reputation as someone who will go into Blackreach or the ash wastes of Solstheim when proper alchemists refuse the risk. I am a poacher. I am a butcher. And I have killed more pieces of Nirn's awareness than I can count. The elixirs Sindarian created from Nirnroot were extraordinary, potions of exploration that enhanced every attribute an adventurer could want. He called it his life's work, his masterpiece. And he made it by rendering the world's nervous system into liquid form and drinking it. We've all done it. Every one of us who has brewed a potion of invisibility using Nirnroot as an ingredient. Every one of us who has sold Nirnroot to merchants or completed quests requiring its collection. We are all complicit in something we never understood. On Solstheim, surrounded by those giant specimens singing their deep harmonic chorus, I made a decision. I would stop harvesting. I would spend whatever years I have left trying to understand what Nirnroot really is instead of destroying it. I would warn everyone who would listen about what we've been doing, but here's the part that haunts me most. Here's the revelation I've been afraid to speak aloud because it means everything I've done is even worse than I thought. The Nirnroot has been declining for thousands of years. Sindarion documented it. The Imperial Alchemy Symposium ignored his warnings, but the data was clear. Fewer plants every generation, harder to find, harder to cultivate. We blamed Sun's death. We blamed overharvesting. We blamed the Oblivion Crisis and the Red Year and every other catastrophe that has shaken Tamriel. But what if those catastrophes aren't the cause of the decline? What if the decline is causing the catastrophes? Think about it. The Nirnroot is Nirn's awareness, its ability to sense itself and respond to threats. During Sun's death, that awareness recognized extinction and adapted to survive. It protected itself. It protected the world. But we've been destroying it piece by piece for era after era, ripping out the nerve endings, blinding the senses, numbing the world's ability to feel what's happening to it. What if Nirn can no longer protect itself because we've harvested too much of its awareness? The dragons returned in 4E201. After thousands of years of absence, Alduin the World Eater came back to Skyrim and began resurrecting his kind. The civil war between Stormcloaks and Imperials has torn the province apart. The Thalmor move through the shadows with plans we can barely guess at. Daedric princes meddle more boldly than they have in generations. And through all of it, the Nirnroot keeps declining, keeps dying, keeps being harvested by people like me who don't understand what they're taking. We are blinding the world to its own destruction. We are deafening it. We are cutting away its ability to sense threats and respond to them. And the threats keep coming, larger and more devastating, because Nirn can no longer feel them approaching. I sat on that island until full dark, listening to the giant Nirnroot sing. Their song was different from anything I had heard before, not mourning like the Crimson variant, not communication like the surface plants calling to each other across distances. This was something else, a tone I couldn't identify at first until I realized it was the same sound a dying animal makes. The sound of something that knows the end is coming and has no strength left to fight it. The Nirnroot knows it's dying. The whole connected organism, the entire planetary awareness, knows that it's being destroyed too quickly to recover. It adapted to survive Sun's death. It adapted to survive the Dwemer's disappearance. But it cannot adapt to us. There are too many of us. We are too hungry. We want too much. And we will not stop harvesting until there is nothing left to take. I don't know how much time Nirn has left. I don't know if the awareness can recover if we stop now, or if we've already passed the point where recovery is possible. I don't know if the catastrophes will keep coming, larger and more frequent, as the world loses its ability to sense and respond to danger. All I know is what I've done. 23 years of harvesting, thousands of plants torn from the soil, thousands of pieces of awareness destroyed so I could make potions and coin and pretend I was contributing to alchemical knowledge. The Nirnroot didn't always glow that eerie blue-white. It mutated during Sun's death, sensing its own extinction and adapting in ways that defy natural law. It learned to survive without Magnus. It learned to grow in total darkness. It learned to sing across continents and mourn races that vanished millennia ago. It learned so much. It tried so hard, and we are killing it anyway. I came back from Solstheim 3 weeks ago. I haven't harvested a single Nirnroot since. I've told everyone who will listen what I believe these plants really are, what we're really destroying when we take them. Most people think I've gone mad. The college refuses to see me. Merchants who used to buy my stock have stopped answering my messages. Even Avrusa, who understood more than anyone, told me I had let Blackreach get into my head. She still cultivates them on her farm. She still sells them. She thinks the plants are extraordinary and mysterious and worthy of study. But she doesn't believe they're pieces of Nirn's mind. She doesn't believe we're blinding the world. Maybe she's right. Maybe I sat in the darkness too long, breathing mushroom spores and letting grief songs rewrite my understanding of reality. Maybe Nirnroot is just a plant with unusual properties, and the glow is just bioluminescence we don't understand yet, and the chiming is just vibration with no meaning behind it. But I don't think so. I can't think so. Not after what I've heard. Not after what I've felt. Not after sitting among those giant specimens on Solstheim and hearing them sing the sound of something that knows it's dying and can't save itself. The next time you're walking along a riverbank and you hear that haunting chime, stop. Don't reach for it. Don't add it to your inventory. Don't think about the potion you could make or the coin you could earn. Just listen. Listen to what it's trying to tell you. Listen to the call it's sending out across Skyrim to others of its kind. Listen to the awareness of the world itself, trying to make contact with you, trying to communicate, trying to form some kind of connection with the beings who walk through its body every day without ever knowing it's alive. And then make your choice. Take it or leave it. Kill a piece of Nirn's mind or let it live. I can't make that choice for you. I can't undo the choices I already made. All I can do is tell you what I know and hope that someone out there hears this warning before it's too late. The Nirnroot is screaming. It has been screaming for thousands of years, and we keep harvesting anyway because we never learned to hear the scream for what it really is. The sound of the world begging us to stop.